This meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council informational meeting, Tuesday, December 15th to order. First item on the agenda today will be City Council open discussion. Do we have any items for open discussion, Council? Councilor Jameson.
I was just going to update the council a little bit about our South Dakota Municipal League board meeting we had last week in Pierre. We had quite an agenda. We reviewed a lot of bills that are being proposed that impact the municipalities. I think there were 23 or so. We went through all those. But if I could, the big takeaway for the city is that there's an effort to build a coalition with the statewide county association and all the school districts within the state, along with all the municipalities, to find a package that we could bring together collectively as a group. Apparently that's maybe never been done before, but good or bad, it's what we're going to try. And so we're negotiating the terms of that agreement, but that's the big takeaway, and that was our effort. So look for more to come.
Uh-oh.
Any questions for Councilman Jameson?
It's taxes.
Seeing none, any other items? Councilor Erickson?
I just wanted to give a brief update. I had the opportunity Saturday night to ride along with the Officer Scott Nelson on the night shift, and I'm not just talking the night shift. I'm talking the late night shift from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. I made all but 30 minutes of it, and it was extremely fascinating to watch them in action. And what maybe got my heart racing a little bit is quite natural for them. But it was really interesting. One of the things that, two topics I wanted to bring up, we talked about distracted driving. And what was interesting is someone, it was about 3 in the morning, who I thought was probably intoxicated. Actually, he pulled over because they went through the stop sign a little bit too far, was driving not perfect, and so it was enough to pull them over. And upon walking up to the vehicle, this person had a cheeseburger and a bag of chips in hand. And so it was a distracted driving. At that time, he went through all the information and did not end up giving her a ticket, but educated her on distracted driving, etc. Mostly because a high emergency call came in that we had to leave and attend to at that time. But it was very interesting talking about that. The other item we talked about was blinking lights. And I asked, what do you think about flashing lights and things of that sort? You know, and he says, it's great, keeps us moving, especially at night when we need to get to calls and we don't want to turn our lights on. You know, but it does confuse people at night, especially if you've been drinking. And 10 minutes later, we almost got T-boned by a car that went through the blinking red light, and another car on the other side went through it, and you know, he slammed on his brakes, and we're obviously safe. But we pulled them over, and one of the passengers was then later arrested for a warrant. And I found that really interesting that we just talked about the blinking lights and then literally almost got into an accident. And it was very close on my side, mind you. But the whole thing was very, very interesting. I encourage anyone that's able to do a ride along, please do it. I don't know what the rules are as far as being able to do that. But we talked about a lot of different things. We saw a lot of different things, and we've got a fantastic police force keeping us safe, and what they do every day for us is nothing to be taken lightly. So just an update on that, and if you can, do a ride along and pick a busy night.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Councilor Karski?
No questions.
Another item?
You bet.
Okay.
Just a courtesy to the rest of the council, and you've already seen it in the press, and it's regarding the smoking letter that has gone out to the malt beverage establishments, those places that can sell alcohol. I drug Councilor Erickson into this kicking and screaming at first, but she's been a great asset to what we've been working on. And if anybody has questions on what we're doing or why we're doing it, we've met with legal, we've met with the police department, we've met with Heart Association and numerous other people and organizations and business people throughout the community. So if you have questions about what we're doing and why and what our end game is, you can ask. But just as a heads up, so you know that it is coming initiated between Councilor Erickson and myself. So.
All right. Any questions or, okay. Councilor Offenbach?
Not a question, but a different topic. Just a report on the conditional use permit meeting that was at the Bishop Dudley House a couple of weeks ago. We required in that conditional use permit that they have 2 public meetings with neighborhood over a 12-month period of time. This was the second one, just before the end of the 12 months. It was very well attended by lots of supporters. There were actually only 3 people who live in the neighborhood or own businesses in the neighborhood. They were all very supportive. I've been involved with several of the meetings with that neighborhood and with Bishop Dudley House, and none of them was as open and friendly as this one was. It has changed the way that neighborhood sees social services, I think, to a certain extent. And so I just wanted to congratulate the Bishop Dudley House on meeting those criteria. They were really special criteria that we don't require for other conditional use permits, and just lift up to council that they're doing a great job for us and for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kiley?
I would just like to publicly thank Craig Lloyd. He had his retirement party last evening, so I think he's actually going to go through with it, as he calls it, rewirement. Craig and the Lloyd companies have contributed greatly to the city of Sioux Falls, and for that, I think he should be commended and thanked. That's it.
All right. Any other items? Councilor Jameson?
If I could, speaking of items in the news, you know, we've been hearing about the CVB's review of the board reviewing the CVB board. And I know there's 2 counselors on that committee. If there's any updates you could provide us or kind of a status. I've gone to several of them, but I find it very difficult. So if you could help us, maybe share some insight.
Councilor Rolfing or Kiley?
We did not have a meeting yesterday. It was the first time in 5 weeks that we did not. We're scheduled next Monday, and if my memory serves me right, that's the 21st of December. And hopefully we will have our recommendations completed at that point in time. And I think we're also at a point where much of that information can be shared too, and or is available. Some of the information is available on the city website too, some of the documentation. But it has been, we've kind of been back and forth, and it's boiling down to, I think, a few recommendations that are going to be made. And I guess I would just encourage your attendance. I don't know that we. Councilor Rolfing, have they indicated the sites yet? It's 8 o'clock next Monday, but I'm not sure.
Your house.
They haven't determined the site as a downtown library, which is better suited. It's a larger venue for the meeting. So thank you, Kendra.
I'll just add a couple things that it's been very, very interesting. Sometimes dragging along slowly, sometimes going very fast. But one of the things that we found here is that the bid tax, the $2 room tax, has been used effectively and efficiently. And what we're looking at hopefully doing is improving on a good thing going. The idea of the bed tax was to put heads in beds, knowing that if we had heads in beds, they would spend it on gas, they'd spend it on meals, they'd spend it on movies, they'd spend it on events, they'd spend it on a lot of things here in Sioux Falls. And it has worked very nicely. And so what this group, I think, is doing is tweaking it slightly, trying to improve upon some of the uses of the money, and then move on from there to continue to make it an even better tax, if you will, a better use of money than it is right now.
Okay,
right. The number of hotels in the 5-year period has actually increased by over 800. Hotel rooms has actually the number of hotels has increased too, from 43 to 52 participating in the bid, and the number of hotel rooms has increased over 800. And with that increase, we still have seen an increase ever so slightly, about 1% every year in the occupancy rate, which illustrates that what is being done is working. It's just a matter of is there ways that we can better refine the process going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Jameson.
Just as a follow-up so that I get it, what is the process after your report is done, your committees are done, the recommendations are made? That
I'll
goes
take that.
goes to who, then to what, and to when, that kind of stuff.
The recommendation will go directly to the mayor, and he will then do what he feels he needs to do with it, if I'm right, Kendra. And he will make it public, I'm sure, what that is, and because it's a public meeting. And then we'll hopefully proceed to act on the recommendations that were made. Whether, not the group. The group will be done. It will be done within, hopefully, the CVB and the chamber as their management overseer. But perhaps it would be good if you're indicating that one of us or both of us could make a report back on those recommendations so that the council is brought up to date on it. That would be a good idea. And I would be willing to do that, or we could have someone else from the committee come in and do it. And I think that would be good.
I get the sense that it's boiling down to just basically it's going to be recommendations that are going to be given to the CVB without any binding requirements attached to them. We've had some discussion within the committee about, is that the approach? Do we want to actually put some requirements behind these? But I think from what I have heard, and we're not done yet, that basically right now it's going to be recommendations. And to me, it's obvious, too, that not only would we have to include the CVB, but also the hoteliers, because they are big stakeholders in this whole process. So I would like to see them involved as well.
I guess I'm sorry, the idea is, does the city council have any kind of a role? That's what I was trying
Any kind of a role? No.
Role.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
But I think it would be interesting for us to get a report back on that, because we are the ones that finally approved that budget of how that money's spent. So we should probably have that information.
Yeah, I think any role would have to do that would involve the city council would take place only if there was some type of an ordinance change suggested, and we haven't even come close to that at this point in time.
No.
Councilor Karski.
Yeah, you made a comment, Councilor Ruffing, that
I take it back.
okay, because we don't approve their budget.
Yeah.
We do.
We
the
do.
Bid budget.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, we do. She comes in. Terry Ellis Schmidt comes in every year as part of her budget,
And that's the CVB, and this
and it's all put together. Yeah, it's two separate pots of money.
Okay.
Because she can use the 1% sales tax on rooms for about anything, in the CVB realm. The money from the $2 bed tax can only be used for promotion and marketing.
Correct.
And so she has to kind of keep it separate, and therefore she really has two budgets within one.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other items for open discussion? Seeing none, we'll move along to the presentations. Number one presentation will be Top 10 Projects Update. We have Kendra, our Special Projects Manager, will give the presentation.
Thank you, Council Chair. Is this? Am I on? Good afternoon, Council. Kendra Simmonsma, Chief Project Manager for the City of Sioux Falls. Thank you so much for the opportunity and for your attention this afternoon on a comprehensive update of the top 10 city projects. A lot of the information that I'm going to share with you today is a summation of communications and information you have received throughout the year. Just as a reminder, I was here last. I'm sure you guys all keep track. I was here last in February, and so this will be an update of what's been happening in the last 10 months. And I would like to say, too, before we get started, that I do have in attendance the project management team with me today, and that's Deborah Gajkowski, Aaron Bolfenkamp, and Scott Greger. And Scott Greger is new to our team today, or just new to our team. He's been with us for about 6 months. He's been with the City of Sioux Falls for about 2.5 years. He comes from us, from the IT organization, as a manager from them, and we were able to acquire him about 6 months ago. So we're really excited to have his expertise on our team, and you'll see that he'll be leading one of our software initiatives. So I'm first going to just start with major milestones that have been completed over the last 10 months. And these are in no particular order. I wanted to, you all are aware of the major accomplishments that the rail yard redevelopment project has accomplished. You know that a purchase agreement was completed in August and that we had a great celebration out at 8th and Railroad. And then also on November 2nd, the land sale was officially closed. And so right now, after all of the 5 years of significant effort to get the project to where it's at today, we are now moving towards the true redevelopment phase of the project. And so a development concept and design guidelines are currently being drafted. We're working very closely with planning and with community development to start this work. And there'll be a specific project update presented to you in an informational in next month in January. And to note, we've really transitioned the scope of this project from the engineering component now to the redevelopment. And so Aaron Bovenkamp has taken over the responsibilities from the project management role from Josh Peterson. Josh and Mark Cotter are still very involved in this project. Another project that I wanted to highlight is the organizational assessment. And if I can just remind you, one of the purposes of that, or the purpose of that project, was really to ensure that the organization was properly structured and aligned in order to achieve maximum efficiency, productivity, effectiveness, and to ensure that we're providing the highest level of service to our residents and our taxpayers. And so a milestone was reached that we've completed the 5-month assessment. We engaged a consultant, LMI, and in that process, over 200 employees were interviewed. And we allowed all of our employees to provide their input and feedback through a survey. And in general, the outcomes from that assessment was that the city is absolutely structured and aligned properly to continue our growth that we're seeing year over year and into the future. However, there are opportunities that exist to improve our operational effectiveness, and one of those specifically was to have more robust planning around strategic initiatives. And so in that turn, the directors have been involved in a strategic planning process, and they are working through that now. And you'll start to see the fruits of that labor with aligning with the 2017 budget process. We all are very well aware of the construction that's going on with the Midco Aquatic Center. You also know that back in July, we announced the title naming rights deal with Mid-Continent Communications. We're very proud of that. And then currently, right now, the 50-meter pool is under construction, and we do anticipate that we will be enclosed for winter protection by the end of the year. That project is going well. You guys get updates from us, specifically the project team, on that. The mixed-use parking ramp project is another top 10 project that I wanted to highlight some of the milestones that's been achieved over the last 10 months. If you recall, there was a proposal, RFP submitted to the street, and we did receive and select a private entity that they called the Banks to partner with us. The Banks is comprised of U.S. Hotel and Resort Management along with Bender Midwest Development. And they brought along a design firm, which is Perspective. And so we've been working with Perspective to work on preliminary design and program development. We've also are working very closely with our own parking consultant, Walker. And I know you guys have known this information or have this information been communicated to you. Very recently, though, we've achieved the milestone of selecting a construction manager at risk, which is Sioux Falls Construction, to help us with project cost estimation. As you guys all know, that one of the value of a CMAR is to bring them on during the design process to help us actually come up with a better budget process and to be part of the design decisions so that we can set ourselves up for success going forward. That project will also be coming to the council next month with a more specific project update. The Subdivision Annexation project has been on our top 10 list now for a year. And what you all know is that in the city right now, we have around 50 islands, we like to say, that are candidates for annexation. The administration is working diligently, and we have identified 5 specific land areas within the city for annexation. And work is progressing, and I know that there's an update this afternoon to more specifically on that, so I'll defer to that. The other significant milestones achieved for this last year is the City Hall renovations project. If you recall, last year we were able to finish ground floor renovations and we completed a service counter. And this year we actually completed second floor renovations. And that's significant because that allowed our engineering teams that were in several different locations to all get back located in City Hall on that one floor. That also ended a lease agreement that we had at the 114 South Main Avenue building. So it's a really big milestone that that project completed. Going forward, we do still anticipate in 2016 that we will renovate the first floor of City Hall to, again, maximize the amount of space that we have there. The additional update I want to provide for you is the EnerGov land management software project. We've been running on that new system, software system, for the past year, and it's been going well. We're learning things as we go, and we're optimizing our business processes. The citizen self-service feature, which is allowing citizens and residents to go online and submit for permits and pay for permits and also request inspections. We're actually waiting on a vendor software release for that, and so unfortunately, that's delayed us a little bit on that actual feature, and we anticipate going with that implementation into the next year. So when I came in February, we were hoping to have the citizen self-service sooner, but it does, our vendor now has reconfigured some things, and it's requiring us to wait for a new release. The next things I want to talk about are really 3 new initiatives that the administration is tackling right now as part of our top 10. Fleet management is the first one. And as you can see, the overall objective for fleet management is the modernization and centralization of our fleet systems and our operations. And the reason we want to do that is to capture some efficiencies and also control our costs while improving service across the city. Right now, the team is currently looking at a vendor selection process or going through that, and they do anticipating coming to you, the City Council, for an informational update once that selection process is complete. I will tell you that this is being led out of our Public Works and our Finance team, and I mentioned Scott Greger earlier, and this is his first top 10 project, which I think will be really well because fleet management, there's a significant software component. The second new initiative that I wanted to talk about today is the public safety initiative going on right now. And the overall objective of that initiative is to enhance our business process performance and to address any gaps we currently have in our business solutions. And that includes on our emergency dispatch, in our records management, in incident reporting, and our corrections management. And so the stakeholders involved in this project is more than just the city. We are also actively engaged with the county and also Metro Communications. This is a significant collaboration project right now, and we are very proud to say that the meetings have been going well. Right now, that project is really in the requirements assessment phase, meaning that we're looking at what our current as-is situation is and what our future state to be is, what we want it to be. And then the last initiative that I wanted to touch on, which you guys are, I believe, all familiar with, is the administration is working on a city administration building. You know that the purpose of that project is to address our space needs while continuing to be prepared for growth, improving our service to our residents, maximizing the taxpayer dollar, strengthening our department collaboration, and improving overall employee work. And so, as you're aware, Coke Hazard has been brought under contract. You guys approved that contract to begin preliminary design work. And then very recently, we've announced Henry Carlson to help us determine cost estimates, because before we can move forward and ask for your consideration to continue the project, we would like to provide a cost estimate for the project budget. And so, as we've always discussed several times, is that the City Council absolutely has the this project determination whether we go on to the next step or not. And I believe that that project comes back to you in early January, February timeframe for an update. So that was a brief overview of what's been accomplished the last 10 months on the overall top 10 list. There are regular scheduled updates on all of our specific top 10 projects. Most of them are on quarterly bases. Some of them come as request. If you believe that you need more information, certainly reach out to my office or to one of the directors who are leading these initiatives and let us know. But we're well prepared to provide regular updates on these top initiatives. And then I will come back as well in 2016 just to provide an overall update. And I wanted to let you know that all of this information is actively maintained and available on our siouxfalls.org website under active/projects. And then additionally, we have a project dashboard internally just because of all the communications that we have with all of the departments. As you know, these top 10 projects cross multiple departments. It's not just being done by one department. And so we use this project dashboard to help us just internal communications as well. So with that, thank you so much for your time and attention, and I welcome any questions.
Questions from the council. Councilor Jameson.
Kendra, a couple things. I heard you mention a Scott Greger.
Yes.
Could you point him out?
Yes, please, Scott.
Anybody with the name Greger? I just didn't recognize him, so very good that. Thank you. And then as well, is there any chance that you could turn this into a top 11? I think with the adaptive traffic signals that are going to go up on Minnesota Avenue and 41st Street have the opportunity of impacting the quality of life of so many people in our community that I really think just make it 11 city projects, because I think that's a huge deal. It's a big deal for me, I'll say that, but I think it's a big deal for all the people who live here.
And certainly that the projects that aren't listed on the top 10 doesn't at all say that they're not at all important, but certainly 10 is top 11 seems a little, but yes, I'll take that in consideration, Counselor. Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, Kendra, a couple of things. First, the organizational assessment.
Yes.
Is there a white paper executive summary of that could be given to us or made public so that we can see what results came out of that?
So I believe that, or I know that in July a communication was sent out on that project, and so I'll follow up with Bill O'Toole and HR to get the additional documentation.
I would appreciate it. Lastly, got to go through, look for my notes. There it is. Oh, collaboration on the public safety.
Yes.
You mentioned county. I'm assuming that's Minnehaha. Are we working with Lincoln County also?
No. So it's the sheriff and the Minnehaha County.
Okay. Is there any hope that we can do that?
I'm going to defer to Deborah.
Hi, Deborah Gaikowski, Project Manager with the City of Sioux Falls. Those discussions were briefly touched on, but we did not make any decisions at this time whether to include Lincoln County. We're doing the needs assessment and requirements gathering, so perhaps in the future, but I don't really have a specific answer for you right now.
I don't know whether to suggest you include that or not if there are some reasons that I don't know about, but I would urge that we do more of that.
I can take that back to the steering committee.
If you would, please, because I think it could be important. I mean, we've got a pretty significant part of our city now that is in Lincoln County, and so we need to look at it both ways.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Urfenbach.
Deborah, stay here, because I want to echo what Councilor Rolfing is saying, that for us to ignore Lincoln County at this time in our history is really kind of short-sighted. And so I would say, and absolutely, let's a nod to Councilor Jameson for pulling those three organizations together, but the city and both county boards worked together on several projects over this last year and are continuing to work on that. To ignore that work is also pretty short-sighted. My other question then about this is in relation to the work group that Minnehaha County has going, and that some of our city council members are on. Is this your group that you're talking about, the public safety group? Is that in addition to the jail study that the county is doing?
Yes, it is.
So we have yet another study group and work group on this topic.
And this particular, it's for a software system, and the software system would replace what they're using for like adult corrections, their records management, the computer-aided dispatch with Metro Communications. That's the type of system this would.
So this is a software solution only, and I apologize for not reading business speak as well as some do, but current business solutions, that means software, correct?
That's
You're
correct.
only looking at software for emergency management and whatnot.
Right, and mobile in the cars, And fire reporting, fire is also part of this.
Okay, again, all three of us need to be involved. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Moving on, we have our next presentation, Foundation Park update. Slater, oh, no, this looks like Darren
apologize,
Smith.
yeah.
We'll start off, so.
Maybe I'd start, Councilor Jameson, you just discovered something I learned a few years ago. Kendra has a very polite way of saying no or moving in a different direction. But maybe 10A and 10B, then you could, not top 11, 10A and 10B. So, okay. Well, good afternoon. Darren Smith, Director of Community Development. We are here today to provide an update on Foundation Park. I believe it is the first formal update we're giving, and we've committed to quarterly updates going forward. And I think that will be very important because there will be a lot of effort over a long period of time that goes into making Foundation Park a reality. And to say that all of us are in the preliminary stages is even an understatement. There's a lot of work getting done right now and a lot of work to come. But it is a tremendous opportunity for our community. I know each of you recognize that. I also wanted to say that before Slater comes up and he'll go into the detail, because he really is, him and his team are the ones doing the heavy lifting right now and on the front lines. I do want you to know that we do have multiple city departments, planning department, public works, community development, and maybe others, but at least those three, and multiple staff collectively in those departments who are working closely with Slater, the Development Foundation, and all of those folks to support them at the highest level we can with processes like the annexation process, which is currently underway, will be coming to you soon, infrastructure, all those things that Slater is going to go into more detail. In our office, Mike Gray is an economic development coordinator. I think Mike is here. Yeah, there's Mike. Just want you to understand that we've assigned Mike to be the direct liaison to the Development Foundation at the staff level, specifically for whatever their needs are, but also specifically for Foundation Park. So when Slater and his team need something from the city, they know that Mike is always there to help and connect them with the right folks. And then, of course, Mike Cooper with planning and Mark Cotter with Public Works are here today, too, if you do have specific questions about city processes. So without further ado, Slater, would you like to come up and write up?
Thank you, Council Chair, Council. First of all, if you would like a hard copy of what I'm going to show you, there's some copies over here on the table. Or do you already have them? Okay.
We all have them now.
The only caveat I would say to both the public and the council is that this is, as Darren said, we are in the preliminary stages, so we're still working through design and the engineering, and so I'll show you some of the changes that have occurred since the early concepts, but I don't believe for a second that what you have in front of you will be the final design, because it continues to change and evolve as the project does. So,
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt? I'm sorry, Slater. I apologize. There is Mr. Chair, if you would ask the audience to tone down their voices, that take their outside conversations out of the room. It's difficult and distracting on this end of the room right now. Thank you.
Please, in the audience, if you are going to have a conversation, we ask you that to move it out of the room so that we can conduct the city business. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so it seems like yesterday, but it's been 6 months since we had the public announcement of Foundation Park and unveiled, the early concepts that we put together, kind of the vision that we had for what the park could be. So you'll remember, and for the public's benefit, this Foundation Park is located at the northwest quadrant of I-29 and I-90. It's about 820 acres. It is a park that is designed to accommodate heavy industrial versus light industrial. Certainly light industrial can go in there, but one of the primary benefits of it, in addition to being at the intersection of two interstates, is the fact that it has Class 1 rail service bisecting the property. So that's the preliminary concept. And I put a north arrow on these drawings because in order to kind of fit everything on the page, I've had to rotate things around and it changes a little bit. But I wanted to keep you oriented as to the direction that north is and I-29 is moving up. So that was the early concept, and that's what we presented to you and the public back in June. So since that time, we have been working on continued property acquisition. At that time, we had property that was under options and various agreements and everything, and so we've been moving forward on the process of acquiring that property. We've been going through the planning phase and the design phase. So we've had to do more detailed topographic surveys and maps, and that in turn feeds rail design and utility design and road design and all those type features. And then finally, we've been working with a variety of prospects. Interest has been very, very strong in the park. Certainly, we seem to have tapped into a type of client that the previous parks we've done was unable to accommodate. So large sites, large footprints, rail users, something that historically had not been available in Sioux Falls, and we've been very, very pleased with the response. So let's go into the property acquisition side of it. So these are the various parcels, the various families and trusts and groups of families, but the various parcels that we assembled in order to put the park together. So where we've been since June is that we have closed on these sites. So these are now in ownership control of the Development Foundation. The ones that I've placed CFD on, that stands for contract for deed. So that's owner financing essentially. And the significance of that is that just like when you have a mortgage on your house and you go to sell it, that mortgage has to be satisfied and released. When you have a contract for deed for property and it's owner financed, well, whenever we sell that property to a prospect, then that means that we will have to pay off that portion of that contract for deed in order to gain a release of that in order to turn around and sell it to the prospect. So, and that'll become a little bit clearer why I'm making the distinction now. So we are frantically working today, in fact, and over the past few weeks, to move to a closing on some additional properties that is scheduled to take place tomorrow. I mean, it still could glitch and hold up and be delayed a few days, not by anything that would keep any of this from happening. It's just the complexity of the transactions with multiple landowners, multiple family owners, and trying to get everyone's signature on the line and satisfy all the requirements is just very, very complicated. So hopefully tomorrow we will close on the little triangle to the north side of the rail. Is an additional approximately 15-acre site. And then 50 acres of the property that you see where it says contract for deed, and you've got the odd-shaped property and the little dashed line. So above that dashed line would be about approximately 50 acres that we would be purchasing outright. And so pulling that out of the contract for deed so that we have full control and ownership of it. Our very first prospect, that's the location that they want to go in. So we're going to go ahead and pull that out of the owner financing, own that directly, so that we can move forward with our first prospect on the property. Then the remaining properties that you see there are all owned by the McCrossan Boys Ranch Foundation, the McCrossan Foundation. And so we are planning to close on those remaining properties on January 7th. The two properties to the left or to the north of the railroad tracks, the two large sites, we would be purchasing outright. They're under option. The property that you see remaining in blue, that would be to the southwest corner of the property, we would be acquiring through a land swap. And this is what we would swap. So we would gain the property that you see that's referenced as land swap. And basically what we're doing is exchanging a buffer zone of property to McCrossen's Boys Ranch along the south boundary of the property. It squares up our property and it gives us a needed site. It just makes it much more palatable to develop. That's part of the original concept. We've always planned on that. But it gives you a sense of some of the, I think, complexity of the transactions that have been put together in order to assemble all of this property. Okay, so there's an aerial view of the original concept of the park. And I want to move from that now to tell you a little bit how that's evolved. So I call your attention to, if you will remember, the property to the south or to the right of the railroad tracks. That's phase one. So that's what we're really concentrating on now. That's all that we're looking to initially develop. And the property to the north of the tracks or to the left of the tracks is designated as a mega site for a mega project, a very large project. Chasing a large project of this type is what brought us to this point of having a lot of property under option and then making the decision to convert it into an industrial park. Okay, and then you also see the rail spurs that are coming down to the south or to the right that are kind of going through the property. And I want to show you how, as we've gone into the engineering phase and moving from concept to design, how some of that has changed a little bit. So this is the most current version of the layout of the park. And just to kind of help with our conversation, I've popped up the original concept map. And so you can see similar, but you can also see how the interior road has kind of straightened out a little bit to parallel the railroad track. It squares up the sites a little bit, makes it a little bit cleaner. And as we've worked with our projects and they've, moved buildings around and reconfigured them, it works better with our prospects. The other thing that you see is that some of the interior roads that we looked at, we don't really think are necessary anymore because the type of prospects that we're seeing are requiring a large enough footprint that we may not have to even subdivide that interior loop. People are taking very large tracts, and then we would use the sites to the far right or to the south of the property as smaller, sites. That even is probably subject to revision. Right now they're about 3-acre sites, and we may move the road in a little bit in order to convert those into about 5 or 6 acre sites, which we think might be more marketable and suitable to our clients. The small parcels that you see along Marion Road, we would reserve for commercial property. Whenever you have this much industry and these many employees, you need to make provision for things like Subway shops and, convenience stores or those type of retail services. So we're reserving that there. Now, I also want to call your attention to the railroad spurs that if you look at the original concept that run from north to south or from left to right, going down into the property. As we have gone into the actual topographic mapping of this in more detail and looked at the grading that railroad requires, rail wants to only have about a 0.5% grade. It wants to be very, very flat, and that's safety and for a variety of reasons. Because our park gets higher in the middle, these rail spurs go running the kind of the length of the property from the north side down into the south just aren't feasible in an economic way. So the most current design of rail and working this out with our various prospects takes more advantage of the, paralleling the railroad tracks. And so what you see here is that a variety of properties, large parcels that run along the railroad track that we can provide direct rail to, but we are also reserving, I wish I had a laser pointer for you, but the, let's see how to describe it. You see, so follow over to the left of the site where you have kind of this long, thin parcel. Do you see that? So we're reserving that right now, and we're evaluating the prospect of would it make sense for what's called a transload facility, or the ability for rail to be offloaded onto trucks and then to service all the sites within the park with rail, as well as additional sites within the community. And so we're having a variety of conversations with various companies and everything related to that. Yeah, there we go. That works. Okay, right there is what I'm talking about. So as we've dug into this and looked at it, there's no way that even at the very beginning, there's no way that you would ever bring rail to all these sites throughout here. But companies really, there's a variety of companies that don't require direct rail along spurs to their door, but they may want an occasional shipment of rail. And so we're investigating some of these ideas like this that would allow us to provide rail service, essentially, regardless of where you're located within the park or even outside of the park. Rail could be offloaded on a truck and then delivered. So we're kind of going through that evaluation and trying to figure that out. Which brings us to activity. As I said, we've been extremely pleased over the level of activity that we have had in the park. And I want to call your attention to, the size of these parcels. And I was talking about the change in having a new product in the community and tapping into an unserved, part of the market. So typically, the Development Foundation, just year in, year out on average, will turn about maybe 15 acres of industrial property in a given year within their parks. Then other parks are servicing, other industrial parks are servicing clients as well. Well, we haven't turned a stone in industrial park yet, not a clod of dirt, but we have a letter of intent on this 54.21 acres. We have a letter of intent on this 38.24 acres from a second prospect. We have a verbal commitment on this 42.53 acre site, and they're reviewing a letter of intent. And then we have another company that's reviewing a letter of intent on this property. We legitimately have the opportunity to come out of the gates with several of the larger industrial projects that the community has seen. So we're very, very pleased with where that is. But of course, that puts us in the position of being on the fast track, trying to move everything forward as quickly as possible, because we have clients that are waiting for us to get the park up and running and operational. And we're all working from the city and their team to us to the state, trying to get this thing up and running just as quickly as possible so that we can accommodate their timetables. And I think that was it. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. I wanted this to be pretty informal.
Thank you, Slater. Any questions from the council at this time? Councilor Jameson.
If you go back to that last map you showed with those, and you circled and talked about those letters of intent and verbal agreements, that's just awesome.
Yeah, it is very exciting. Now, I will caution you, a letter of intent is not a purchase agreement. so it's not as binding as that. But we got to the point where we had so much interest in these large rail sites and companies jockeying for the same sites that we started, sending the message to them that we need you to do something. Put down some earnest money, plant your flag, say this is where I want to be, and then we have to design around that. When you're working on this scale, what we have found is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and changes in the boundaries of these properties, change the grading plan. Changing the grading plan changes the rail plan, and vice versa. Any change to any of them changes the others. So it is an iterative process of kind of, does this fit? Can we tweak this? And then ultimately coming to your final design. But yeah, we're very, very excited.
If I could, either for you or Darren or somebody on the, I'm sure, and I know that there's going to be platting fees collected and other fees for this area and development, and that's going to be returned back to the city. But as you change these boundaries and move them around, or when and how does all that platting fees and process come into play?
Sure. Well, the first step for us is annexation, and our pre-annexation application is in and is under review. And so I don't know exactly what the timeline is, Mike. January, sometime there. You should be seeing the application for annexation. Once that happens and that that kind of legal commitment is in for service to the property, then we'll work to convert the letters of intents into purchase agreements, and hopefully. It all depends upon our prospects, but hopefully come next spring we'll start moving dirt and construction of multiple facilities in the park.
Just on the platting fees, though, how much money is likely to be generated there, and will you have to change or repay platting fees if you adjust those lines? How does all that?
Well, the platting fees are based upon a per acre or per square foot basis. So the area determines the platting fees. The other component of the platting fees is the amount that needs to be recovered to repay for sewer and other utilities. I'm certainly not the expert that these guys are, but the platting fees are designed for the city to recover their investment in the utilities and infrastructure in the park. You want to add anything? How am I doing?
Any other questions from the council? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Slater.
Thank you.
Have a good day. All right, moving along. We now have city-initiated annexation, East 69th Street and Southeastern Avenue. We'll have Mike Cooper, Director of Planning, give our presentation.
Good afternoon, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Joining me today is Albert Schmidt with the Planning Office. I want to give you an update on specifically one of our top 5 annexations that Kendra talked about earlier, and then just kind of give you an update on some of the other ones. So we did identify 5 areas at the beginning of the year, and quickly going around the map, on the left-hand side is the West 41st Street Prairie Meadows, that we're still pursuing that one. As you know, that includes potential infrastructure improvements, sanitary sewer, water mains. And one of the things that we're looking at now is the infrastructure component of the road improvements that would be required and what type of ADA compliance we would need to either go with a rural versus an urban section. So we're still anticipating that we'll have that coming back to you shortly in 2016. The Bathos, which is down at 85th and Louise. That's an existing rural residential development. We've had a number of meetings with them. The feedback that we're getting from that neighborhood is that they would like to do a pre-annexation agreement that we're working with them on. Part of that development will most likely remain residential, and part of it will be earmarked for future redevelopment. And one of the issues that the neighborhood is asking us to consider in holding off with the annexation versus a pre-annexation is that we're working through the I-29 85th Interstate interchange study, and they want to have a little bit more understanding of what that's going to anticipate in terms of future improvements. So we'll be working on a pre-annexation agreement that will come to the City Council the first quarter of next year. Up in the northeast part of the city along 26th and the Veterans Parkway is the Kappelman property. This is a large tract of vacant agricultural land. We're working with the property owners on an annexation petition along with a development plan that would be brought forward as part of the annexation, and that will be followed by zoning and other steps in the development process. Then at 57th is the Ryder property in Sycamore Avenue. That's an existing horse farm and residence. We're also working with them on an annexation petition as well as a development plan for their property that will include a land use and zoning request as part of the annexation. And then finally the Hayes, which is what we're going to focus on quickly today, which is down at 69th. That's consists of multiple sites with 4 homesteads on it. And as I'll talk in a little bit more, we're working with them on a pre-annexation agreement that will come to you in January or February of next year. So each of these 5 obviously has taken longer than we had anticipated. They're all different. And as we continue to work on the implementation of these 5 and then the next 5 that we're going to start on for 2016, just to let you know that there's no real template that we can work with as far as how we proceed with these annexations. So back to the 69th and Southeastern Avenue. This just shows you that this particular 20-acre site is completely surrounded by city development, city limits. And then we have the roadway network. This shows you the major street plan, including arterial streets, collector streets, as well as the future Veterans Parkway. So we've made improvements adjacent to this area on both Southeastern and 69th Street, and we've been working with the property owners to make those improvements. We've also completed a number of zoning changes around this property, and that's what this particular exhibit is showing, that on all 4 sides around this area, zoning has been approved, and there's development occurring at different phases. So again, the reason that we identified this as one of our top 5 is because it is surrounded by development, and we anticipate that there is going to be development pressure in this particular area. We also have the roundabout, just so you can maybe visualize better where this property is located. So, as I said earlier, we do have multiple property owners. They're all the Hayes family. It's currently divided into 4 tracts. There's 4 residences on that. We have various situations where they're on septic systems, or they're on city water, or they're not on any city utilities. And so through our discussions with the family historically, in working with them on the 69th Street improvements as well as the Southeastern Avenue improvements, we've always said that this property is going to be annexed and then developed at some future point. And the reason that we're working on a pre-annexation agreement with the Hayes family is that they understand that, but they're not working on a development plan at this particular moment in time. So what we are anticipating bringing forward, which I think is the next slide, is kind of the timeline that you see there. The pre-annexation agreement that we're working with them on would identify that the property would be annexed no later than January of 2018. And that will also identify the transition of that property from the existing rural residential to some future development stage. So this timeline just shows you that we've been working on this particular area for quite some time. The family has been cooperative, and their representative has been willing to work with us on this pre-annexation agreement. And again, according to this, we want to bring that back to the City Council in January or February for your final approval. And then the last slide is just to show you that we have a history of pre-annexation agreements. As Slater said, the most recently one was the Foundation Park. We've also done one in a portion of Cactus Heights, in a neighborhood east of town called Pine Lake Hills, and then the Brandy Avenue pre-annexation agreement. So we have used that process in other situations, and I will say that with some of our top 5 that we're going to be working on in 2016, we could see that happening again, as well as the Bathos development that I mentioned earlier. So that's a very, very quick overview of what's going on with our annexation initiative. These are all being initiated by the city, and we will continue to be the one that initiates these discussions with other property owners that we've identified going into next year and beyond. So that's a quick update of where we're at with the Hayes annexation initiative. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Questions from the council? Councilor Rolfing.
Just for the heck of it, on your last slide there with Pine Lake Hills, what kind of an agreement have you got? Not kind of agreement, but that started a long time ago?
Yes.
Are we closer on that one?
We worked with that one because of a sanitary sewer issue for the east side growth area. And so there's a specific date on that one, and I don't have it off of my memory, but there's a specific time frame that we identified for annexation with that agreement.
Super. Thank you.
Councilman Jameson.
Mike, the Hayes property on the 69th Street improvement in Sycamore? Is that the other?
Southeastern Avenue.
Southeastern.
If I said Sycamore, it's Southeastern Avenue.
69th, is it gravel in front of the area now?
It's an improved urban section.
It's after them that it turns to gravel.
Do we have? Yes.
Yeah, I
for
see.
a portion
Okay.
of it.
I see. So right, Sycamore is where it's gravel, and
Southeastern.
they're at Southeastern, but Sycamore is where the gravel is, right?
I think in front of the Hayes property, it's already pavement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and then on the timeline.
The First Street east is where the pavement currently ends.
Yes. Yep.
And then it transitions to gravel.
The
but we are anticipating more street improvements because of the zoning and the other development that's been approved to the east.
Right, that whole area is just growing fast and great. On the timeline, if you could go to that timeline, it shows annexation petition in January. If the property owners are looking for more time, asking for more time, how flexible are you, or how and is there a fast, hard deadline that you're after, or is it something that could be flexible?
Well, the pre-annexation agreement that would go to the council would identify in that agreement that the property would be annexed by January of 18. If there was some future desire to amend that, that would have to come back for council approval. So the pre-annexation timeline is one that the Hayes family has proposed to us.
Oh,
they came up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you.
Thanks, All right, that is our last presentation. With that, I will now adjourn this meeting.